All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 962nd monthly meeting of ATMoB. Our guest speaker today will be our own Mario Motta, and his talk will be about the 100 years of the Springfield Telescope Makers and the life of Russell Porter. It's an awesome milestone. We're not too far behind. We'll get there soon. This must be from Glenn. This must be Glenn's work.
Glenn sends his apologies. He can't be here tonight. He's not feeling well, but he did tell me. He asked me to make sure you guys knew that there's homework here. He wanted you to think about 3 things that are wrong with this picture. That's your homework. He's going to ask you next month. It's kind of funny. Anyway, next please.
Sure.
So this is Glenn's quote of the month. Certainly the history of astronomy shows that every time we thought we were special, we were wrong. By Seth Shostak, an American astronomer and author. And Glenn wanted me to talk about the fireball that many of our members saw back on the evening of April 10th. Ooh. I was out in my, that's not it, but Glenn just shamelessly stole it off the internet. But apparently it was nice and green like that. It was pretty bright. I started to see emails being sent by members that had witnessed it. It was a little after 9 o'clock in the evening over in the west near Venus. So I went up on the American Meteor Society. If you click on their website, you can look at fireball logs, and you can see where people reported the sighting. And they also triangulate and show you the path of the meteor. So it was definitely to the west of us. But quite a few members actually saw it. And one of our members, if you click the next slide, please, Dave Giordano, has an all-sky camera, a meteor camera, and that's it over there by Venus. Nice. And so...
just behind the tree.
Just behind the tree, yeah. It was pretty... well, Venus is, at 9 o'clock at night, Venus is probably 30 degrees above the horizon, so it was pretty low down. I was out observing. I didn't see it, but I probably had my head to the eyepiece, and it only lasted a few seconds.
Did this thing have a possibility of landing somewhere? Or?
Probably not.
The main... One of the museums in Maine has a bounty on.
Yeah, but no, it's not this one.
No,
it's not this one.
Calais.
It was on the news today. If you want to try and earn $25,000, go up to the woods of Maine and scour the land for fragments of a meteor that fell. It has to be recently. Yeah. I didn't look that one up, but anyway, if you're out looking up, you're going to see stuff like this. It's kind of cool. I remember one time Sky and Telescope published an article about a couple of teenagers in California that were hanging out on a street corner. And all of a sudden, thunk, a meteorite hit the ground. And the comment on the article was that statistically, every 2 hours, a grapefruit-sized meteor strikes the surface of the Earth. And that seems like a lot. And why aren't they just raining out of the sky? When you think about how 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water and large tracts of land are uninhabited. But they do happen all the time. So just get out there and look out, you'll see them. Anyway, next slide, please. So here are some observing highlights for the coming month. And it's a pretty slow time. However, I will point out that the moon is new on the 20th of April. That's a week from last night. Right, what are we on today? Today's the 14th? 14th. Yeah, so next week. That gives you a nice opportunity to look at Earthshine. That's a great photo op. Earthshine, of course, is sunlight that is reflected off the Earth to the moon and back to our eyes again. And it's best observed when the moon is a thin crescent, whether it be in the morning or whether it be in the evening. Turns out, in April, in the northern hemisphere, the ecliptic stands really high in the west. And so even one day after new moon, 2 days, 3 days, the moon is fairly high above the horizon at sunset, giving us a great opportunity to look at Earthshine. Friday and Saturday night, moon passes by the Pleiades. Saturday, Sunday night, it passes by Venus. And just again, photo ops, if you're out there. The Lyra meteor shower peaks, if you want to call it that, on the 22nd of April. Something that may be more important to you is on Wednesday, April 26th, at about 9:46 p.m., the moon is going to occult a magnitude 5.9 star Omicron 1 Cancri. How many of you have never seen an occultation? Anybody out there have never seen one? They're kind of fun to watch. This is a pretty bright star, telescopically, disappearing on the dark edge of the moon. It should be a pretty fun thing to watch. It's reasonably timed, and so try to remember to get out there and watch that. The Lunar X is visible mid-afternoon on the 27th. I suggest using a single element polarizing filter to improve the contrast if you've got the time.
What's the Lunar X? I'm sorry.
Lunar X is a clair obscure. It's a play of shadow and light where several crater rims catch the morning sunlight. The floor of each of the craters is still well shadowed, and it just looks like an X. And if you catch it just right, the X looks like it's just out there hanging out in the darkest space. And it's only visible for a few hours every month. And apologies that this is a mid-afternoon event, but if you've got the time, go out and look at it. You know, this moon will be up about 25 degrees in the southeast. If you have a polarizing filter, you can use that to cash in on the natural polarization of the sky and dial out some of that skylight, improve the contrast a little bit. It's fun to do. And then, of course, if you want to really get out there in the early morning, the Eta Aquariid meteor shower peaks on Friday, May 5th. That's really just coming up an hour or two before dawn. But you can see bits and pieces of Halley's Comet if you go out and watch that one. It's more favorable for the southern observers in the southern hemisphere. So those are some things to think about. Planet Roundup is next. Mercury reached greatest elongation earlier this week. I hope you've been out there watching it. If we all rush over to the window now, you can probably see it. It's over there in the west-northwest.
Clear.
It's a crystal clear night. But it reaches inferior conjunction on May 1st. It's not named after the swiftest of the gods for nothing. It really books along. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see it, by all means get out there and take a look at it before it disappears into the solar glare by the end of the month. I was out observing the other afternoon, looking at Venus and Mercury, using the offset, alt-azimuth offset to point the telescope. And you can do that too. Venus is 42 degrees east of the sun at magnitude minus 4.1, easy peasy to see in the daytime. You could probably even see it with naked eye if you knew exactly where to look for it.
Sure.
You could, as a matter of fact, to go back to the earlier slide about the moon passing by Venus, that's a great opportunity at daylight to find Venus. You know, go get a star atlas out, your digital star atlas, note where the moon is relative to Venus. Go out and find the moon, easy, right? And see if you can spot Venus with the naked eye. It's pretty doable. Minus 4.1 is easy. Mars is like Mars doesn't even look red to me anymore. I was out looking at it last night. I was like, just a bright star that kind of is sort of in the way of Gemini. Because I couldn't even detect color, but there it is. And Saturn at magnitude +1 is rising about 3:30 in the morning. The ring tilt this viewing season, now the end of the year, is only 8 to 10 degrees. So we're approaching the next ring plane passage, and the rings will actually disappear from view a couple of years out, I think. Anyway, those are the planet roundups. What's the next slide? I can't remember. Oh, the challenge. It gets blocked there by a thing. So it's NGC 3044. Has anybody tried this visually? Has anybody tried this one? Because I have. I know you've taken some glorious images of it. Visually, that's a difficult.
I actually
galaxy.
looked at it.
Did you really? With your eye? To an eyepiece?
With the C14.
That's fantastic. What did you think of it?
Very slight fuzz.
Dude, very slight fuzz. It's a nice edge on galaxy, but it's really faint. And so I think, Mario, what sort of nelm do you have down there?
In Florida, it's a C14.
No, but what's the naked eye limit?
Oh, it's a Bortle 6 sky.
Okay.
So basically down to about 4.5 mag.
Yeah, that's pretty bright. It's like about Framingham.
Yeah.
And I could, in my 20-inch, I could barely see it. And even at the clubhouse, we looked at it through Steve Clardy's 18-inch, and it was just a little faint gash of light. Almost, you really had to work hard to see it. So that's a tough one. But next slide, please. That's Chris Elledge with the Middleman. Nice wide field view.
Little dust lane through too.
You can see a little bit of the dust lane, yep. Up the next one, it's Mark Helton's. Nice shot from Mark. Next one is Mario's. I like how you can see, it almost looks distorted, Mario. The galaxy itself looks like it's been distorted.
Yeah, I was surprised because I took it with the C14 and I didn't see that like extension there.
Did you kick the tripod at all? I mean, maybe you kicked the tripod.
No, this is with the 32-inch. I got home, I took it with the 32. The original one I sent, but I just got this a few nights ago. And I looked it up on professional images. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
That's real. It
It seems to be very isolated too. You wouldn't think it would be distorted by like a Hickson group of galaxies. You know, it seems to be just out there by itself. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Probably tell us the history.
And that's
Probably tell us some of the history of it.
Doug Paul's image. Doug, did you Photoshop those colors in?
Nope.
The projector doesn't do any favors.
Yeah. Looks a little better up high.
It does on the screen.
All right, next slide, please, next slide.
I cheat and only use real colors.
There you go, perfect. So this month, I was just talking to Roger Ivestor on the way over here. It's his birthday today, by the way. Roger said this galaxy is considerably easier than this month's galaxy. So this is NGC 4088. It seems to me that this is in a rather lonely part of the sky. Although it may not look it here. When I looked this up on my charts, there aren't a lot of guide stars to get you there. So you have to kind of pick and choose, unless you've got a go-to telescope. You just sort of have to pick your way across the star fields until you happen upon the thing. It's a pretty bright galaxy. Doug, I love that picture that you took of it. I love that, how distorted that galaxy looks.
Yeah, it's also one of the ARC lists for just that reason.
One of the ARC galaxies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's 4085 down below it.
That's not, was that the conflicting galaxy? This one, or do you know?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
It's pretty far away.
You know, the controversy about ARC objects is that two galaxies sitting side by side have vastly different redshifts. And so...
Well, yeah, I just, it's also ARC 15. I don't know exactly why, or probably when Art made his list, he didn't have all the red shifts. So it's quite possible that he's put a few extra items in there.
Okay.
But in any case, it's considered a distorted galaxy for one reason or another.
Yeah, look at that. I like the detail you can see in there.
Yeah. Very
So that's the only one you
There'll
can
be
get there.
more detail next month.
Perfect.
nice. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, our very own Mario Motta. We'll be talking about 100 years history of the Springfield Telescope Makers and the life of Russell Porter. Many of you know Mario. He's very, very prominent in his sort of activism for light pollution, and he's always been an avid amateur astronomer and telescope maker. He's past president of ATMoB, AVSO, and a past board member of the International Dark Sky Association. And he's
Now
built...
called Dark Sky.
What?
Now changing his name to Dark Sky.
Oh. Good to know.
Starting next one. It's still idea this one.
I'm good. I'm good. Just barely made the cutoff. So he's built many telescopes, including his own 32, which we saw images of earlier today, in his own domed observatory. And in his spare time, he's also led a very distinguished medical career, culminating on the AMA's Board of Trustees, going as far as advising the UN on their deals of light pollution and the proliferation of satellite constellations. So please welcome Mario. Should be good.
Okay. And advances how?
I believe space for the arrows.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Mario.
So I forgot my laser pointer, but since we're talking about a 19th century man, I'll use a 19th century pointer. So it'll be fine. I'm sure most people here have heard of Russell Porter. How many actually know something about his life, though? Okay, small smattering. Hopefully I'll teach you something new about him anyways. He had a remarkable career. I mean, 100 years ago, if you wanted a telescope and form a club like this, you had to be independently wealthy. If you didn't have the Lowell family behind you that had millions even back then, you did not buy an 24-inch Alvin Clark and set up an observatory in Arizona like he did. And the average telescope back in 1920, and I'm talking about a 4 or 5-inch telescope by an Alvin Clark or a Bashir, would have cost 2 years' salary for the average worker. So it was not affordable by anyone except independently wealthy people. So along came Russell Porter, and he completely changed the milieu of telescopes. He accelerated the American astronomical program, and he started people thinking about building telescopes, and that set off a chain of events where our club was founded. 10 years later, Springfield Telescope Makers, many clubs were founded around the country. And the reason why this comes up this year is because this is the 100th year of Stellafane. And I'm the MC, so I invite you all to come. I plan on dressing up as Russell Porter, and which is good because back then they had a little bit of class. Everyone, as you'll see the old pictures, which I'm going to show you, everyone wore a tie, a jacket, three-piece suit, and this is while they're filling potholes in roads and grinding telescope mirrors. We've come down a long way from that. But at least for this meeting, I'm going to dress up that way, and I'll channel Russell Porter as I'm emceeing the meeting. So Russell Porter, born in 1871, died in 1949, right after the 200-inch, which was finished in 46, which he worked on. He had quite a career. This is him as a young man. He had quite a career. He was an Arctic explorer. He was an engineer. He was an architect. He founded an art colony in Port Clyde, Maine, after he finished his Arctic voyages. He was a painter, and many of his paintings, I don't know if anyone's been to the Smithsonian, the new one with the Native Americans. Some of his paintings are in there, of his Arctic voyages. And then he retired from all that, and he got interested in astronomy, self-taught how to make telescopes after he was given a 6-inch refractor by, what am I blocking his name? Hartfield in Vermont. He started grinding his own mirrors and decided he got sent back to Springfield. I'll show you pictures of all this in a moment, but I just want to give you the brief overview. And decided to teach others how to make telescopes. He did. They built a whole bunch of telescopes, 18 of them, and that caught the attention of Ingalls at Scientific American, published a few articles on that. That led to the Astronomy 3-book version, which many amateurs in this room I know have copies of. Because of that fame, Stellafane got started, our club got started, and then he got pulled away to California to help build a 200-inch by Hale, which when he got finished, and then he died 3 years later. So that's a lot of stuff for one man, quite a career. Here he is as a young man when he was in college. And the Porter family in 1899, I think that may be him up there. I couldn't verify that.
Who was in, which one?
The young guy here.
The little kid, okay.
He'd have been 20.
Yeah, you would have been 20-something.
1879. This is 1899. So yeah, I'm not sure. I couldn't verify the people in the picture, but it said Porter family. So he started off by going to Norwich University in Vermont as a civil engineer. He then transferred after 1 year to University of Vermont. And then something happened to the family. Despite my research, I couldn't find out what, but his father couldn't afford the tuition anymore. So he dropped out and moved to Boston. No, actually, we'll go back then. He moved to Boston, and he, a year later, managed to save enough that he enrolled at MIT for architecture, of all things. So he had 3 different types of training right there. He finished his, got his diploma at MIT, but while at MIT, Richard Peary, the Arctic explorer, came and gave a lecture on his voyage around Greenland. He was the first person to sail around Greenland. And that really caught Russell Porter's imagination, so he decided he would go on Arctic voyages with different people, including Peary. And he went on, I think, 13 different voyages, and here's all his voyages mapped out. They started off by going with Peary to Greenland. Many of his paintings are in Greenland, and these are the years that he did those voyages. He did one where he went to Norway, and in 1903, he got stuck in the ice, this ship got stuck in the ice. It's interesting, the captain of that ship was from Nantucket, and from one of the whaling families there, and they got stuck there for 2 years before they got rescued. So he managed to survive on seals and whale blubber and all things like that, but he finally got rescued. So that, despite that, he went on a couple more, and then his last voyage was to Mount McKinley, now known as Denali, and he was part of a survey team, and the initial survey of the Denali was by Russell Porter. So that's another career. Ship Diana to Greenland, 1900. So now these are sailing ships. It's not like luxury yachts today. These were working ships. This is going by Greenland. Here's some of his many paintings of the Arctic, and they're at the National Archives now in Washington. These are just, he's a great artist, he really is.
Do we know who this person was who's standing here?
Excuse me?
Who that person is?
That's Russell Porter.
Oh, that's him, that's
Yeah,
him.
that's later in life.
Ah, okay, fine, thank you.
Here's, he also took photographs. Here's Greenland 1900 with Eskimos. Porter on a dog sled. This is Porter over here.
Sure it's not the one in back?
Excuse me?
You sure it's not the guy in back?
No, it's the one on the left, apparently, according to Bert. He was a young man back then. This is some of his paintings, Eskimos in kayaks, dog sleds, Old Faithful. He writes what they are. And here he is showing how Eskimos were building igloos, how to survive in the Arctic, scaring off polar bears. An Eskimo. The Tromsø in 1905. I think this is the one that rescued him. And this is the Cumberland, the Hope, I'm sorry, and it was crushed and wintered over 2 years. And Denali, and that was his last voyage. Well, it wasn't really a voyage, he went inland, but he did an Arctic expedition and mapped out the area, did survey work. Okay, so after that, which is quite an extensive career as it is, he decided he would move to Port Clyde, Maine, and he was going to set up, this was his dream, he was going to set up an artist colony for intelligent people to come and do all different things. And he designed a whole bunch of cottages. This was his house that he built. And then in 1913, after he did this, and he's still building up other houses, he got 2 16-inch blanks from the Brashear Company, Curtis of Hartness. Hartness was governor of Vermont and was an avid amateur astronomer, but he was wealthy, which is why he could have his own telescope. And he liked Russell Porter, knew him from back in Vermont, and was always eager to help him. So Porter took those 2 16-inch blanks and built a poloscope in the corner of this house. Those 2 blanks are what's now the Porter telescope that was finally built in Stellafane in 1930. And we'll show pictures of that later. But originally, that home was right there first. This is a photo that was sent to me by Peter Bilo. He apparently did a trip out there and took a picture. The house is still standing. Peter, you online? Anyways, this is his photo. So the house is still existing. This is a Porter painting of his porch at that house. He took drawings of just about everything he did. This is a different Port Clyde cottage called Land's End. And then this was the castle, which was built for the colony to have visitors, and they would give lectures and all that kind of stuff, but that was the house for the visitors. And then he designed the Belfast Church, and it's still standing there today. So he left quite an imprint in this part of Maine. He also dabbled in making bronze statues and figurines. Here is a figurine of Porter testing a mirror as it's being tested. Love to have that if we can find it. Here's I'm not sure what this is, but it's kind of a candy tray. But notice it's got the knife edge embedded in it, and he's looking through a telescope.
And it says amateur telescope making.
Excuse me?
It says amateur telescope making.
Yeah, that's right. So he was well into it. Then he did sundials as well. Here's one of his, it's a fish. Here's another one, a sun clock. I'm not sure how this worked. Ken, you know quite a bit about it. Do you know how that clock worked?
Yeah, you basically, you get the sun's image, which goes through the circular thing at the top.
This here?
There's a lens up there.
Yeah.
And it's meant to focus it on the gnomon. And you adjust,
But it's just a regular spring clock, right?
well, actually, yeah, and what you do though, is there isn't so much a clock, you rotate you basically use it to tell you the time at any given point that the sun's there. It doesn't keep running, as far as I understand.
Oh, really?
I think it's just a dial indicator of
The dial
of
indicator?
position.
It just tells you where it is, and you have to align the gnomon and everything.
Anyways, he was quite inventive and kept coming up with new ideas. Here's another one of his sundials later on. This was in California. And he even composed music, which they did at Port Clyde. So again, this is phase 2 of his life. And then Harkness ran the Jones and Lamson company, which was in Springfield, Vermont. And in those days, all the major manufacturers were built along the rivers because you use water power. So Jones and Lamson was built there. It was called Precision Valley. Jones and Lamson made gears and precision screws and all that kind of things. And
Optical comparators.
excuse me?
Optical comparators.
Yeah, that's what he called him back because he wanted to have an optical comparator built so he could measure how well the screws are being made. And he lured him back and gave him a job, and he decided to take that job. So here's a house where he eventually settled in, and this is someone at dinner asked me if he had any family. The answer is yes, this is his daughter. And this is Russell and Alice, and I don't recall what their daughters.
Caroline?
Caroline? Okay. So I don't think he had any male children, right? Yeah, I don't think so. I think that was the only child, and they moved to California because someone asked if there's any family around here. I think they settled there. So he started up there in 1919, 1920, and the first thing he did was he said, I know how to make telescopes. Remember, he built that, ground that 16-inch mirror and a couple of others, and he asked if anyone at Jones and Lamson would like to make telescopes, and this came as a novel idea, and people signed up and said, yeah, we'd like to. Now, these are all pretty much engineers and workmen who knew how to make precision equipment. So here are the original people in this very select club and the size of the instrument that they were going to grind. And this was the first organizational meeting. And there was one person not at Jones and Lamson who was a school teacher, and she was the only woman who joined this group. Here they are, 1920, the original telescope makers in front of the Jones and Lamson building. Now, what's that?
Look at all the ties and jackets. Of course.
Yeah, they dressed well back then, don't you think? They had some class. We've kind of lost that. And I should point out Porter, right? That's Porter right there.
He's got a point.
So here he is grinding a mirror. He's teaching others how to do it, and he's showing the technique which many of us still have learned how to do. I started off this way with mirror grinding and polishing around a pedestal and walk around and grind. Here he is looking at the mirror. Again, vest, tie,
Cigar.
white shirt, cigar.
You don't do
Okay.
that anymore.
I'll point out again, these people had a little bit of class, which we're all missing now. So they did finish these telescopes, and as they finished, they started having star parties. Here's one in an observing field at one of the farms back in 1920. Then in 1920, they went to the top of one of the mountains. I should have wrote down which one this was. It could have been, this could be Hawks Mountain. And notice they camped out for the night and brought up their telescopes. So he started star parties. Mount Ephraim, 1920, had a shed with the cows, but they set up their scopes. It's one of the first scopes that were made by this group.
And with top hats.
Yep.
That's cool.
1921, in Westminster, they did multiple star parties all around the area looking for the best spot. Had dinners. Mount Ephraim, 1921 again. Springfield Mount. Frank Whitney at Mount Ephraim, 1922. These were good-sized scopes. I think anyone here would be proud to have one. Hawks Mountain, 1921. Okay, notice the cars. Firewood, and they set up all these markers. I mean, they were doing a good time. The problem was,
What is this construction on the left man?
I'm not sure.
Looks like an antenna, so.
Yeah. They finally got tired of dragging these. At the time, these scopes were heavy. They weren't lightweight like we can make them now. They're not made of aluminum, the mounts. So they had to drag them around, and they were starting to get tired of this. And someone had the bright idea, why don't we find a place where we can set up our scopes more permanently? So this was a Hawks tablet mark. Oh, that's right. He was doing survey work at Hawks Mountain. Remember, he was a surveyor, and they had him do that as well. And there was a plaque which they put there to mark the height of the mountain and its specific, its exact location. It's still there, apparently. And here is the plaque. He designed the plaque, and notice it has his signature knife edge test for the mirror. Still there. I'm not sure what the nickel is for.
Good size.
Then there's another scope by Oscar Fulham, 21. Hawks Observing, 1921. So 1922 came around, and they pretty much all finished their scopes, and they entered it in a fair, and people were astounded. Okay, and they finally said, we got to do something with this. This, by the way, is the 16-inch mirror that eventually became the poloscope. That we got to do something with this, and they decided that they would look for a place to set up their scopes, and that's how Breezy Hill. Porter bought land on the top of Breezy Hill. That's where the pink is right now. He also made numerous sketches and had a good sense of humor. So here he is with one of his famous paintings. So he's got a telescope that was just finished, 5 p.m. 7 p.m., got to hurry to catch that moon. 9 p.m., look around, 400, what? Magnifications, okay, looking at the moon. Hell, what an image at 9:01. This is what he was seeing. So he took an axe to it. He had high standards. He didn't want bad telescopes. So they went up and looked at land. This is the Stellafane site. Here's a photo of him sitting on Breezy Hill, trying to decide if this is what they were going to pick for their observing site. And here is from Breezy Hill, looking across the Mount Scottney, which is directly due north. The trees now have grown up, so it's hard, you have to look through the trees to see it. But back then, this was all farmland, and they had cows grazing, so there was no trees. There's more trees in Vermont now than there were back in 1923. So they built this thing called the shack on Breezy Hill, and this is where they were using to warm up, eat, and all that kind of stuff. But this is on Breezy Hill where the Pink now stands. That was the original building. The shack. So here, again, they're contemplating what they're going to do with this site. Notice again, even when they're camping out, three-piece suit and a tie. They finally decided that they were going to build a building up there, and it was finished in 1923, which is why this is the 100th year. So they got a tractor and they're clearing out a road. The paint started to get built. Whoops, what happened? Sorry about that. There we go. The paint started to get built. Here's construction. Put on the roof. And here's a painting by Russell of the Pink. And they had their first meeting. It wasn't in this building, it was down in the valley. And they actually incorporated into an astronomy club, December 7th, 1923. First meeting. But this was the inspiration, and that's where they were going to plan on observing from now on. The following year, they added an extension of a porch and did some more exterior work. They kept their telescopes in there. And it was a good meeting spot. Could go upstairs, and that's where they kept a whole bunch of bunk beds so they could sleep when it was time to finish for the night. Didn't have to go back down to the valley. All that's still there. If you come up to Stellafane, how many have not made it to Stellafane in this room? Okay, this is a good year to come. You have not made it? You're embarrassing me.
Sailing.
Okay, this is going to be a year, right? Okay, you should all come up, really. It's going to be quite a year. Here is, now that the Pink is built, Russell Porter right here. And the reason why it's painted pink, okay, that always comes up. They finished the building, they ran out of funds, so they actually went into the local paint store in Springfield and asked for donations. And they said, well, we have all these empty partly filled cans, that's what we got. So they just mixed it all together and it came out pink, and rather a hot pink, so there must have been some red in there. And the bottom line is, at first it looked a little strange, but people liked it. Now it's become traditional, so every time it's repainted that exact same color, which is why we call it the Pink. Porter was excellent at mentoring young people. Here he is with a young man. This is in later years, but it's the same group as they got older, constantly meeting every year at Stellafane. The original founders. And they had to do road work occasionally, still in a three-piece suit. So they're arguing over a comet. There's nothing to read, really. They're just arguing over it, but they ended up destroying the scope and became good friends, just looking at it visually. I would have put a moon there instead of a comet, and Nugent and I could have fought over that, but that's okay. So Porter, Ingalls, and the Springfield Mount. So what ended up happening is word spread around rather quickly. In fact, people from Boston started going up there, a few every summer, and that gradually increased more and more. Ingalls, who is editor at Scientific American based in New York City, heard about it and they communicated, and he thought it would make a great story. So he went up to Springfield, Vermont in 25, even though they were communicating since 24. And he was so enthralled by people making their own telescopes. Again, up to this point, most people would have had to spend 2 years' salary to get a telescope. And here you have a bunch of Vermont hicks, basically, having all these telescopes, and they're having a great time. So he decided he'd write some articles about it, and Porter helped him write them. This was 1925. I'll show you that in a moment. Here's later years, Porter and Ingalls. They've aged a bit here.
That's Hartness, I think.
Is that Hartness?
Yeah.
Okay, my mistake. I will fix that. Thank you. You're right, because he's got a mustache there. So here's Scientific American, November 1925, after that meeting. And here was the cover, and here was the article. This went like wildfire, not just around the country, but around the world. People looked at this and said, we can make telescopes? So that started a movement in many localities around the country, including here in Boston, including right here. That's why we were founded a few years after this as a club, but people started doing this right after this article came out. There were a couple more articles after that, but this made him a household name for anyone who was interested in looking at the sky. There was a John Pierce made a whole bunch of kits because people kept asking, where can we get the blanks? Where can we get the grid? Sound familiar? We have that all the time right now, right? So they ended up making a series of articles and books. And then Pierce made these mirror kits because everyone was asking where to get it. And they became so highly popular that they have records of sending these kits in the 1920s to Tasmania, India, South Africa, and all across the US and Europe.
I think one of the conditions for publishing the articles is that they had to make supplies available.
Really?
I think so.
That was a condition?
I think so.
Okay, I'll have to ask people about that at Springfield. I didn't hear about that, but okay. Either way. So then they're doing repair work. He built the sundial in the back. Again, he likes making sundials.
It's still there.
It's still there. 1926 convention. Porter, got a little bit of a pot now. 1927 convention. Slowly getting bigger and bigger. New telescopes being made. Stellafane, 1929.
Nice tower.
Isn't it on the other side?
It is.
What?
Isn't it on the right side of the building?
Yes, now it is.
This is the north side of the building.
Looking from the back.
Oh, okay.
And so he still liked his polar telescope and he wanted one there. So he decided those 16-inch, one was a mirror, one was a flat, that they built his one, what he had in Maine, but he decided he'd build one for Springfield. Now, he had a vivid imagination. This is how he envisioned it. Okay, a marble staircase, marble facade, beautiful telescope. Okay, it didn't quite end up like that, but it's still a remarkable instrument. This is what it actually came out as, and it's still a remarkable instrument. The idea is that you go inside, and in the comfort of just sitting on a chair and looking at an eyepiece that stays in one spot, you can make this move around anywhere in the sky. So it'll be a flat goes to the concave mirror, goes through the hole, and you observe inside. Comfort and convenience. So again, they were James and Lamson, he worked there, and he started on this pretty early on, notice 1920, started making parts. It took 10 years, but he started making parts for this whole telescope. People who've been to Springfield recognize some of these parts. Bringing it up to the top of the mountain when they were finished. They built this kind of a wooden sled in order to bring up the part after the cement was cured. Attaching all the parts to this scope. Construction crew sliding up the metal ring.
Couple of guys who have a lot of faith in their fellow people.
I know, that thing was heavy. And here is from I think it was the top of the tower that they had built. Someone took a photograph of it. And here is the mirrors, the mirror and the flat with the hole in it. And inside, basically be looking through that eyepiece through the center, and the whole thing would rotate. If you've been to Stellafane, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you really should go. It's a historical monument. Again, this is the 100th year. This is the year to go. So here it is, finished, 1930, and all set up and ready to go. Still there now. 1930 convention, a lot more people. Some Bostonians are in here. The telescope started to get bigger and bigger. Ralph Patton was from Rhode Island, and here's his scope back then. I think that's pretty impressive for 1930.
It's still in skyscrapers, have that.
Where is it?
At the skyscrapers.
Oh, this one is in skyscrapers?
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing that down there. I'll have to look for it. I'm going to give a
It's one of
talk
the
there
back buildings.
September 30th. I'm going to look for that. And some people decided to build portable telescopes, and we'll just attach it to the car. Get a little carried away there. And then he did his garden telescope, sold quite a few of them. I saw one of these in Florida. I was with I joined two groups down there. The one in Naples, but they don't really do much. I went up to the Fort Myers. It's a much more active group, and they meet in the planetarium there, and they have one of these there. They're all numbered.
He lost his pot belly.
What?
He lost his pot belly.
Yes.
That's good. That's why he lasted long.
But these were sold as kind of ornamental things. They kept in the garden. They had a mirror, secondary, and eyepiece. They're quite valuable. If you see one and you see it for a low price, buy it. It's worth a lot. Ken, do you have one?
Yeah.
I figured as
Bill
much.
also does.
And again, he was ahead of his time in many things. Notice he's doing eyepiece projection of the sun. Viewing Venus in the daylight. So this was not your idea.
I got it from those guys.
They were doing this 100 years ago, okay? All right, so don't take credit for this.
No eye patches either.
No eye patches.
It's John Strong, I think, on the right.
And imaging, 1930. Film camera,
Ooh, what a pain.
astrophotography. And here they are, sitting on that little wall around the pink, discussing something. I'm not sure who all the people are, but they're in a heated discussion. Anyways, 1929, again, his fame spread wide. And Hale had built the 100-inch, which Hubble was using at that time. And Hale wanted to build one twice as big, the 200-inch, but he needed to collect talent. So he asked Russell Porter if he'd come to California, and Russell decided to make that as a cross-country trip. This is the car he drove across the country, took him a week and a half, I think, and he stopped in different places. This is in Colorado, I believe, and he eventually, of course, took the job. Pikes Peak.
Oh, yeah.
Petrified Forest, Arizona. So here's the California house that he eventually settled in. He took the job. He went up to Mount Wilson while he was there before they decided on to look at the other observatory, and his wife and daughter are there.
Is that a brownie she has on her head?
Yeah, it's a box camera.
No, Kodak Brownie.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out, I didn't even notice. And of course, he's still doing his humor. And here they are stopping in Death Valley, and other people in the car asking him to hurry up. So here they are in Mount Wilson. I actually got to look through this one, the 100-inch. It was fantastic. Saturn through that was beyond belief. And there's the 100-inch dome. So he looked at that, good ideas. Here's the 60-inch. And here's a painting of Hale, who hired him, done by Porter. This is later on in years. So here they are on Mount Palomar. Nothing's built, and they've decided on the mountain. They hadn't decided on the site. So he's doing site survey work for where the 200-inch is going to go. And they brought up small telescopes. This is a 4-inch. And this is what he used to test the sky. Camped out there and looked at the sky with the 4-inch in different sites, looking for steadiness of air and what the observing site. So he did quite an extensive survey work. And here's a picture when they chose the site. He's marking it. And here's his drawings of where the Mount Palomar was going to go. 200-inch was going to be built here, and here's all the accessory buildings, so he sketched it all out. Now, not all his designs were winners. Here's his original design by Porter for the 200-inch. Okay, it's a little bit clunky, very strong, looked like an erector set, but it was not chosen to be the final design. So he went back to work and came up with this. A little more sleek, a little more modern. This was the winning design. And again, he designed both of them. He went from this, a year later came back with this, and that's what they went with.
Yep.
Here's a Russell Porter in 1935. And he designed, he did quite a bit of sketches. Remember, he was an artist, as well as an engineer, as well as a telescope maker. So he combined all those skills, and he made these iconic pictures of how it was going to be built and how it would be designed, including, how it looked in different positions.
Sure.
You can see that. I've got 2 of these hanging up in my observatory. It's my inspiration. They're just beautiful. If you see them, they're just beautiful renditions of what an observatory should be. And his view of what the dome would be like. This is 1939, by the way. So the 200-inch looking east. This is the mirror supports, cutaways to look how the mirror was going to be supported. And here is the, I think it's the deck axle. No, yeah. The shield removed so you can see the inside. These were incredibly useful. They're not just beautiful, but they were incredibly useful engineering drawings to get an idea of how the size, is a man, and what needed to be built. Cutaway of the deck axle. These are, you forget, this is looking toward the north from the south. Declination,
All right, could you go back to,
this one?
no, one more back. The people, are they, where are those people in the lower right going? Are they going up the?
They're going up the,
Those
up that
two,
big-
yeah, those things that you can go inside apparently.
Yeah, you can, I've been to some.
And he was demonstrating that. His steps over here.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that while it's moving.
no.
Okay, deck axle to 200 inch. Looking north. And study D. So again, he did many of these drawings to get, to show how it can be built and where it's going to be built and what it would look like. So when they finally decided it was going to, and here of course is the cage, where the observer would look inside. But what they finally did, Caltech, was they asked them to do a 1/10 scale model, and here it is.
I think that still survives at a college.
It's in Caltech, right?
No, it's not in Caltech. It's Westmont College or some other college.
They moved it? Okay, but it was designed while he was at Caltech.
Oh, sure, yeah.
To tell you something about the prime focus cage.
What's that?
In 1982, they were still using it the way, you know, a poor graduate student sitting there controlling it, looking through a little scope at the guide star. Okay, that's what he's doing, right? He changes the plates and all that. Turned out that the chair the guy was sitting on had a spring sticking up.
The spring?
A spring sticking through the cushion.
Yeah.
Okay, which the graduate student had to sit on, unfortunately. Okay, and they didn't quite have enough money to replace the cushion. Okay, because I was in the process.
It's only a grad student.
Yeah, I was visiting.
It's all about priorities.
These days, of course, that's still my little CCD camera or whatever. And what the hell?
Failing somehow.
It just shows you they mistreat grad students from way back.
Yeah, they were. That's true.
Here's Russell Porter sitting down doing a sketch. And here is Caltech. The 200 inch came from New York, got shipped across the country. They had to do two castings. The first one didn't come out good, and the second one finally was shipped. Here it is on arrival.
The first one is on display at the Corning Museum.
Yep.
Right, it was a failed blank. It's right, you can still see it in New York.
Yeah, evidently a bolt that was holding some of the forms melted or something like that.
So this is the second attempt at it, and this one came out, and here it is being moved into the construction where they're gonna grind the mirror. Whoops, wrong way. So it's brought in, and it's laid down into the mirror grinding. Notice the back end is lightweighted. And here is the grinding machine.
Boy.
And here is Russell's Porter idea of what a grinding machine should be. I'll just let you read that. But basically, his concept is you should just be sleeping, and while you're breathing in and out, this would set off one set of Rube Goldberg devices, and your heartbeat would set off a different set of Rube Goldberg devices. And the bottom line is the machine would automatically water, automatically move the grinding, the mirror back and forth, and the carbide would automatically be thrown. So it'll be an interesting project to build if anyone wants to try it. He also did some other designs while he was there. Here's a coelostat by Porter. Here's Griffith Observatory. Apparently he helped design this. I didn't know that until I did a little bit of research. Of course, that's a planetarium now, and they're not using it for observing.
Actually, they're
They do some observing?
sure 12-inch Zeiss.
Oh, you mean on the side ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a planetarium now.
Yeah, it was built as a planetarium
Okay.
originally.
And this is out of place. This is when they were building the building in Caltech to grind the mirror. It's obviously finished by the time the mirror got there. Oscar Marshall was one of the people at Jones and Lansing who he was a good machinist, and one of the telescope makers, and he enticed him to come out to do some of the machine work. Here's his telescope in 1921. And of course, Russell Porter being Russell Porter, he collected all the grad students around, and here's Russell Porter up here, and I don't know who this person is, but they're teaching people how to make mirrors. They want to do it themselves. He was a great inspiration. He taught a lot of people. Here's a Caltech portrait that's still hanging there, apparently, of Porter in later years. Stellafane in the 1930s. Okay, there's Russell. He always came back, even though he was working out in California, he came back for Stellafane. Here's a nice big lathe doing a 3,000-pound part. We should have one in our clubhouse.
Yeah.
Here's 1947. The Hale telescope 200-inch got finished in 46, and they invited him to come up, and here he is looking into the cage of the 200-inch. He died just a few years later, don't forget, 1949. So let's go through a little bit of the 30s. He came to an eclipse, he came to the 32 Stellafane convention, and then went to Conway, New Hampshire, Conway, for an eclipse that happened that year. And here he is setting up equipment. So he was an eclipse chaser as well. He's just checking the camera. That's not the scope that he's going to use for the sun. Here it is. So they plan on photographing the eclipse. And there's lots of people camping there as well. Setting up lots of different equipment. Franklin Institute in Philadelphia was up there.
Oh, yeah.
1932 convention. Here he is up front, I believe. And here is the parking lot in 1932 at Breezy Hill. The eclipse. Eclipse and his wife, Alice. Letter from Porter in 1932 to the Springfield Telescope Makers, and he did a little drawing of him waving to the crowd in Springfield. He wrote a little nice note, missing people in Springfield, Vermont. He maintained his contacts back then. 1934. Again, he came out there. And the conventions are getting bigger and bigger. 1936. 1936. This is the Allentown group, 1937. That's from Pennsylvania, and they're standing in front of the Porter scope. And of course, here's Russell Porter. 1946. Now, the war came, and construction stopped in Mount Palomar, which is why it had to wait until 1946 before it got finished. And for the war years, there was no convention. So there was a bit of a hiatus. 1946, things started up again, and he came out. Porter was there. He was an older man at that point. And then after he died in 49, the Springfield Club went downhill. They kind of missed their godfather, the person who started all this, and it dwindled and dwindled. There were only 16 members in 1952, And then a couple of years, they didn't have a convention, okay? Which was a problem. 1954 came along, and who comes to the rescue? The Amateur Telescope Makers of Boston. I don't know if people know our own history here, but in 1954, seeing that Springfield Telescope Makers weren't able to maintain Stellafane, the ATMs resurrected. So he had Chester Cook, James Kagan, and Sam Gardinko from the 1950s basically wrote to the Springfield Telescope Makers and said, the ATMoB will agree to do the publicity, the tickets, and the program if we restart the Stellafane
And
conventions.
financially back. And financially back the event.
And financially back it. They guaranteed it, and but they collected the tickets for the money. I think it was $2 a ticket back then. So this is Burt Willard, by the way, as a young man over here, for those that know him. So it got saved. Here's a picture of the convention in 1954. But 250 people showed up, quite a bit of them from our club right here. So we can say we saved Stellafane.
Wow.
I don't know if a lot of people in our club realize that.
When Dennis DeChico did registration until the 70s.
Right?
Well, after Fred Chellis died,
He took over, right? I don't know if you guys recognize Ed Knight,
yeah.
who our Ed Knight Observatory is named after. There he is in 1959, eaten in the pink there. Top Hill's famous 20-inch scope, 1965. Now, I'm not talking about the later years, so this is just a few brief slides just to point out
Which is
the
Mr. Tuttle?
Tuttle, who's from New Jersey.
No, no, which one? Do you know which is he?
No, I don't.
Might be behind
Yeah,
it.
possibly.
Probably behind it.
Anyone remember? Anyone know this handsome guy?
Paul Llewellyn.
Paul Vallely, 1968. I guess he decided to wear a suit and tie like Russell Porter did. I'm beholden to Paul. He helped me build my 8-inch scope when I was 14, and I didn't make it to Stellafane. Not this year. I think it was either 69 or 70 was my first year. I wish I could find a reference as to when I went there for the first time. But here's Paul Vallely in 1968. Scotty Houston, 1974.
Governor Johnson on the right.
Is that who that is?
Yeah.
I need you to go through all my slides. Okay, I'll put that in. That's the governor of Vermont at that time. And here's modern Stellafane. Okay, on a Saturday night just before the program, and people are setting up on the amphitheater. You guys should all come. Here's a picture by Dennis DeChico, which I shamelessly borrowed. Actually, I asked him permission. And it's of the nighttime sky at the pink. So I'll stop there. Questions? And if I can't answer them, I'll have Ken answer them.
I was just going to say I brought along some Russell Porter drawings and letters and the like. And I also have the card that was sent out to, in this case, Jamaica, announcing the first Stellafane meeting in 1926.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and actually it's the one that I think they may even use it in the publicity. I remember showing it to Burt Willard years ago. And I have that as well.
Great.
So, I'll
Yeah.
along the back.
Okay.
Yeah. Very cool.
Any questions? All right, I do invite you all to come up to Stellafane. This is the year, if you haven't been there yet, you really should go. It's going to be a gala celebration and a remembrance of 100 years of amateur astronomy. It all began there. Prior to that, if you weren't rich like the Lowells, you did not become an amateur astronomer. So we owe him a gratitude for all he's done for astronomy, and he catapulted the United States into a world leader in astronomy by his engineering skills. So that's quite a life if you think about it. So, and I've left out a lot because I had 1,000 slides to go through. I just showed you 150.
The support, the ability to move the big 200-inch is amazingly balanced.
It's on oil.
Well, but also it's balanced. It has
Yeah.
it has weights that move around that keep it in balance, okay, as you move it, so that you can actually walk up to the tailpiece and carry it across the floor by hand, but you have to, and it helps you. It's got the most amazing thing is what was run originally when I played with it in, again, 1982. It was entirely run by basically a single sewing machine motor.
Yeah. I mean, any one of these slides I showed is a talk of themselves by about an hour.
It's just amazing engineering.
Details like
It's
that.
amazing.
But I had to compress it for a 1 hour talk. But I think you get an idea from comments like this, just what an amazing character he was and all the things he designed and built and invented. So, all right, well, thank you for listening.
It's always really, really fascinating to see the history behind all this stuff.
And our ATM contribution, right?
Yeah, the living history are involved. It's very, very cool. I'm hoping to go Stellafane this year. It's always a blast. So I do have the results of the count, thanks to Tom for counting. Not that it's on a slide, but oh, I shouldn't do that yet. So we'll have Maria Batista, Glenn Chappell, and Rich Nugent had the most votes. So I want to thank them for volunteering and thank the others for volunteering to be on the ballot.
Good.
And with that, I'll close the meeting. Our next meeting will be May 11th at 8 p.m. And Rich has informed me that there is a lot of food, so dig in, and thanks to Rich for bringing the refreshments.